Hello. Well, it's been a year since I did the last video, and a couple of days ago, a guy called Mark Stevens emailed me to say could I do some more, and I'm more than pleased to do this in the hope that it helps. Anyway, I ask you to bear with me. Since I'd last did it a year ago, I've had a new computer, so I'm trying to reconstruct this from scratch. So if it's got a different feel or look to it, I do apologise. But I managed to reload the files. So this is where we left off. We had a white background. Yeah, let's do this in one hit. With a white background, I'd put a black background over the top, and then we got two panes, which we'd aligned in the last video. Now, what I've done is I've deliberately made this pane, which is pane 4, darker than this one to show what we're doing, because the aim is to make sure that our lines disappear and our whites are white and the blacks are black, and it's consistent across the whole frame, the whole pane so far. I've artificially made this dark so you can see what's going on. I would strongly advise that when you're acquiring your images you take great care to get your exposures correct and the same as best you can, but you're inevitably going to get some tonal differences across your image, so here goes. Now I'm going to start off talking to you about this thing called the histogram. You can view the histogram by going Windows, Histogram, and something like this appears. And this basically, for those of you that this is new to, this is a graph, just like you used to do at school. That point there is 0, and this point over here is 255, because it's an 8-bit image. So what we've got is that basically, because that's 0 on that point there, over here, this end of the image, just sort of flash there, they are. That's the black end of the image, and that's the white end of the image. And what this graph is just the number of pixels that occupy those values. So what we have is left-hand end, these are dark pixels, then a few less, sort of very sort of middle to dark, and then the most of the image is areas of grey, and then it gets lighter and lighter and lighter until at this point here that's the brightest pixel on the image, and then we've got a gap. So we've got no images that, no pixels that are pure white, and there's a gap there, so there are very few pixels that are pure black. Now that's okay, we're happy with that, because if you'd got this line disappearing off the end of this image, we would be losing data, because it would be overexposed, because there would be a lot of pure white overexposed or burned out pixels, and at this end there would be a lot of unsaturated or unexposed pixels that are pure black. So what you want is to see gaps at either end of this histogram. Now this sort of little icon window thing here has got no adjustment on it. The way we adjust the histogram is through a tool called levels, and there are also curves, but we'll come back to that again in a minute. The way to adjust levels is to go Image, Adjustments, Levels, or Control L as it shows there. If you click it, you get this window. Now this is very much like this window here is a mirror of that, so the graph is the same, it's just bigger and more detailed on here. And what you have is you have 3 arrows basically. You've got a black arrow and a white arrow. Remember, black at this end at 0 and white at 255, and then in the middle you've got your grey, just as a convenient point in the grey. And what you can do is you can have a slide around with these things, and just to show you how this works, if we take the black image, the black arrow, slide this out of the way, you can see if I pick up the black and move it, and we're working on pane 3 because that's the one that's selected in the layers, you can see that if I put the black pointer there, then all of the pixels to the left of that black pointer are now black, and you can see we've got a very dark image, lost a lot of data in here. So that's what we call a black clip or dark clipped image, basically horrible. If we move the white the same way, it has the effect of, you can see it moving the grayscale anyway, but ignore that for a minute. You can see that as we go in here, then all the pixels to the right of the white slider are now set to pure white, and therefore we're losing all of that data. So I be very careful at this stage of touching with the black and white, but what I'm going to do is have a play with the grey, and you can see the grey doesn't change the black and white, it changes the tones in the middle. Now the problem with doing it through image adjustments and levels is that what this window is doing is it's applying maths to the pixel values of each of in that original pane there. We don't want to do that because that's called working destructively. You're destroying the data in the old image, and if you happen to clip it by mistake, you've lost that data for good. We want to work non-destructively in this, so I'll show you what I mean by that. So let's make sure that's all reset as it should be. We'll cancel out of that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on pane 3. Up to you really, this is the first place to start. I mean, I've decided that I prefer the the look of pane 4 to pane 3. I think pane 3 looks a bit dark on my monitor. Sorry, a little bit light on my monitor, so I'm going to make it darker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on pane 3, which I've got there, so pane 3 is active, and instead of just doing a image levels on it, I'm going to put what's called an adjustment layer over the top. Now this adjustment layer is activated down here. It's the circle with the black and white diagonal segment on it. If you click that, it says, okay, what do you want me to do? And down here you've got levels, and it gives you this. Now what that's done, if you look at the layers, it's put a new levels layer in there, and it will apply these adjustments to it. Now we only want these adjustments that we make with these sliders here to pane 3, so what you do is you click this icon here, which looks like a black circle over a white circle, and that actually locks this layer or these adjustments to pane 3. And the way to check that this is working is by going back to layers. You can see that a little down arrow's appeared and it's all been kicked over a bit to the right. This is a levels adjustment layer that has been locked to pane 3. You're probably thinking, where's he going with this? But I'll show you. You can either double click on that icon there or just click adjustment up here, but what it does is that you can now apply your adjustments. Can you see that that is just applying that adjustment to pane 3, and by sliding the arrow or by highlighting the number and then using your up arrow, you can adjust the value of the grey point of that image until it matches by eye the tonal value, and you can see that that line has disappeared and it's a value of 0.89. Just to show you again, look, if you're way out it looks horrible, way out the other way it looks dark, so once you go into 0.89, disappeared. Now you'll say, well, why didn't you do it up here and just be done with it? Well, the joy of this is that because it's on a layer of its own, it's separate, so the pixel values in pane 3 still exist in their entirety, and this is applying a separate level of maths. So by clicking this eye, you can actually make your adjustments disappear and reappear. And if you find later on in the image you've got it wrong, you just double click on that and you can go and readjust it, because you haven't lost any of the pixel values. So I always work with adjustment layers. Now the other thing I've got here, and I'm always very wary about doing this, is on pixel level 3, pane 3, I don't know if you can see this, but there is actually a difference between the black of the background and the black of this shadow here. So all I'm going to do is just highlight the black slider and just bump it up a bit until the line around there just disappears. Okay, actually one more, there you are. So I've just lost a few pixels off of the black end just to make that disappear. if I've done it wrong, I can go back into my adjustment and correct it later. Now what I've also got is that black adjustment has kicked out this. I've got the line reappearing across here a bit. So what I'm going to do is very quickly go to pane 4. I'm going to put an adjustment layer on it for levels. I'm going to lock it to pane 4, okay, by clicking that icon, and then I'm just going to bump up my black, because remember we made the midtones match just now. There you are. So that's now matched, and I know that my blacks are both 3, so my blacks match, and hey presto, we've made the line disappear. Okay, now just to recap, if you don't like it or you've made a mistake, you can see I've got a level 1 locked onto pane 3, and I can adjust it by clicking that. I can take it off altogether. I can go and adjust pane 4 by clicking on that if you want to. And if you want to be really clever or really tidy, you can double click on this, and instead of labelling it level 2 like it is there, you can go pane for levels. I don't tend to bother with that, but because it's always fairly clear to me, but if that makes it easier for you, then absolutely fine. Now then, the other way of doing this, which is a bit more advanced, or maybe a bit, it depends on the way your mind works, I think it's more complicated, is you can adjust the brightness and the levels of your document or your images by using things called curves. So what I've done is I've turned off these levels adjustment layers, and in the hope that I don't confuse you, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to level pane 3. You can check you're on the right one by, yeah, there, not. And I'm going to put a different adjustment layer on it called a curves adjustment layer. Okay, so what we've now got is we've got a curves 1 layer over pane 3, and that gives you this. Now pale grey in the background is the histogram, and you can see I've got a black slider and a white slider. I can set that black slider to 3, just like it was before, and I can also, instead of having a grey slider, I can adjust the shape of that curve until it matches. Now what I've done is I've made a bit of a mess of it, I'm afraid, but you can have a play around with this to your heart's content, and if you decide that you like to do it this way, and you can put as many curves on as you want, you can have a play around and put as many points on this curve as you want and do all sorts of funny things, but it's just an option to do it, and you can see you can make it disappear, and if you want to, you can use your up and down arrows or your left and right arrows to move keys on the keyboard to do this. If people want to talk about curves a bit more later, then let me know and I will do, but in the meantime I'm just going to right click there, delete that, yes we do, and we're going to work on levels, and we've got some match levels. Okay, there we go. Come back in a minute and just do some masks to really make sure that any straight lines that are still there, and there are some lines in there, we'll get rid of those in the next video. Cheers.